It's August 5th. Where'd that come from? It's August 1st, and there's still no balanced budget in Massachusetts. And that's a big problem. Why haven't they proposed a budget even? Because it's all bad news. Revenues are down so much, perhaps $1 billion a month. Nobody wants to look at this, right? The politicians don't want to look at it. They have trouble solving the budget in a good year. People don't want to think they can lose their jobs. They work for the government. They don't want to think about the taxes raised. So everybody really does not want to look at the bad news of Massachusetts finances. But they're missing the big picture, or they're missing really the fundamentals of democracy and representative government. The purpose of a balanced budget is that everybody brings their agendas while the budget is being made. They look at the possible revenues, they look at the expenses, and everybody argues for their agenda, right? I mean, the firemen say we need this amount of money, and education says we need this much, and homeowners say we can only afford to pay taxes for this, or we're going to leave, whatever. Everybody has their agenda, and everybody gets a fair chance to push their agenda on the budget. But when you don't have a balanced budget, that means, like today, that for August, as Massachusetts doesn't collect enough money to pay its bills, that ultimately they're going to make decisions behind closed doors to raise taxes or to just fire people in the state without everybody getting a chance to put their opinion. And to me, I don't want to call it corrupt, but it's not really democratic. It's not fair. I never followed state finances. I couldn't care anything less. I only started looking at it a few months ago because of COVID-19. And if you're going to fight COVID-19 in the future, right, you want to know that you're going to have the money to deal with it. And so if we did have a conversation about balancing the budget under the current circumstances, we could address these issues. But again, we're not. So everybody is just playing dumb. And what that means is that the wealthy are getting an advantage because it's to their benefit, believe it or not, that we don't have a balanced budget right now. You may say, oh no, if we try to work towards a balanced budget right now, all the poor people working for the city would be fired. No, that's not correct. Okay, it's just not. So anyway, I'm gonna, because again, it's up to everybody in their agendas to agree what needs to be done. What I believe would happen if you really had to balance the budget right now is the people that, the lower paid people in the government would say, no, you need to cut your pay. And so the governor and all these high-ranking executives, they'd all need to cut their pay by 10, 20%, right? So everybody could keep their job, but they're not. So that means that, in a few months or whatever, when it comes time to truly balance the budget, do you think they're going to give their money back? No. And then they're going to say, well, we can't go borrow the money because nobody's lending to states anymore because of whatever, right? And that means now that those people that could have been saved now by income diverted from the higher paid people to the lower paid people lose their jobs. So now I'm not predicting that will happen. I don't know what will happen. Again, I just want to focus on a balanced budget is not about whether taxes are getting raised or people are getting, or you're cutting spending or anything like that. It's about the fairness of people to push their agenda before there are imbalances, to prepare for those imbalances, to prepare for the future. I'm now going to go into some detail. So this is the globe today. Again, it's August 1st. There should be a balanced budget. Actually, there should have been a balanced budget July 1st. But they have a thing where the governor can put in a 1-month emergency budget. So should have had a balanced budget July 1st. Legislature allowed him to go for a 1-month temporary thing. But now it's like, seriously, it's, I don't know. I mean, it's illegal right now, I think. But nothing in the Boston Globe. Well, the top story today is about Methuen's police chief is making $368,000 or whatever and won't take a pay cut when everybody else is making a pay cut in his town. I'm going to explain why he has a very good reason not to take that pay cut because of the hypocrisy, the bigger hypocrisy that goes on in Massachusetts. So specifics about what goes on in Massachusetts. This is the state of Massachusetts, and these are the tax rates for each town. So I'm in Cambridge, which is a very wealthy part of Massachusetts right here. You can see it's in green, and it has a tax rate of under 11%. And Everett, which is here, just 10 minutes away, has a tax rate of over 15%, and that's a poor town. Most of the workers in many restaurants and garbage, whatever, live in Everett, and they come to Cambridge. So the question is, well, wouldn't you think that the tax rate would be lower in Everett because they make less money? No, it's not. It's higher, right? So more of their money go towards taxes to pay for education than Cambridge because their properties are worth less. And if you, Methuen is up here, it's in green area, so it's the same thing. So what happens is because each town, because the wealthy towns can pay, they pay more money nominally than poorer towns, but it's less part of their actual wealth. So it hurts the poorer towns more. In a fair state, but more of a percentage, and all the money be pooled together, and education, the money for education would be split out evenly. Now the state does make transfer payments to these towns to try and even things up, but it's just done enough to make it look not totally unequitable, but it's not enough. It's not truly fair, or not sufficiently truly fair. But if maximum fairness would be all the money is equally spent on each child in the state, and it is not. Anyway, so there's a place called, let me just even go to the site. There's an organization in Massachusetts called Mass Budget, and here they have their mission statement. It's basically to help, disadvantaged people in Massachusetts, people of color, whatever. And sorry, that was a mission statement. And here's their staff. And of course, it's run essentially by a woman of color. And there's always, various people that work on it of various ethnicities. And, they get a lot of money, I'm sure, from wealthy foundations and billionaires and things like that. And again, their job is information participation democracy. Now, August 1st, they should be saying right on their homepage, we need a balanced budget now. Why don't they? They don't because they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. And I actually have more, how to put it, anger or distaste for them than that person who says, don't raise the taxes on my house or my dead body. These are the worst people. That person is just saying, this is my position, I'm going to take it. But these people are supposed to be representing people that are disadvantaged. They're supposed to be representing that kid in Everett that's going to school to get equality for him over the kid in Cambridge or Newton or whatever. So, they'll do an article like this and there are almost no numbers. They'll just basically say like down here, like, yeah, I mean, the places like Cambridge, 1% of their income or 3% of their income goes to schools, and places in Everett, 5% of their income goes to schools. So it's not really fair. But they don't do, what anybody could do, or I did in 5 minutes, is to basically say, well, what's the difference? So I figured different factors to make Everett equal to Cambridge. And the bottom line is Cambridge receives each year $60 million more for its schools and stuff like that than Everett. It's a $1,200 difference between Everett. So Cambridge taxpayers, if they all paid $600 more a year on their property taxes and gave that money to Everett, then Everett could have the same schools as Cambridge. Now, I'm not saying we should do this, but it's for organizations that should say things like this, but they don't. They just add to the problem because they say they're advocating for these people and they put out this stuff that it is short on detail and doesn't advocate any sort of real solution. It's basically just like, oh, please give us some more money, instead of saying, no, this is it. It's $600. How much of the $600 are you going to put in to make this even? That's what they should do, and they don't, and that's horrible. Anyways, back to the Methuen police guy. So he's in this wealthy town in Massachusetts, and they're saying, oh, cut your pay because, you know, COVID and people losing their jobs, and we have to fire some junior police officers. And he's thinking, no, what are you talking about? Like, I picked up your kid, some guy that has worth tens of millions of dollars, right? I picked up your kid and drove him home, and you have this $10 million mansion, and you're telling me to cut my pay? You know, why? Why am I cutting my pay? You know, because your taxes are, you know, you could easily afford my pay on your taxes. You're pulling back a little bit, but you don't really need to. You could pay more. But you know what? The wealthy and Methuen, they don't want to pay more. And then this guy is calling them on it. He's calling them on the hypocrisy because he knows that people in Everett don't get enough. He knows that the police captain Everett doesn't get much money, but it's a different type of problem, right? A different type of police chief. And so good for him for basically saying, no, I'm not going to lower my pay because that's not really what we need. Like my lowering my pay, yes, would help the state in general, but it's not going to help people in Methuen because they're already wealthy. If you really want to help like the state, like the people in Everett, then you should advocate for that. You shouldn't just go look at my pay. So good for him that, you know, he's holding his line. It's just horrible. And of course, the Globe just totally eviscerates this guy. I won't go into it. But anyway, that's his argument. And I think there's something to it. Anyway, there's a site called the Pioneer Institute, and they have these benchmarks, and you can do all the kinds of, they have all the numbers on the taxes and everything. You can very easily calculate these factors for all the towns and how to even things up. I mean, I did it in 5 minutes, a very quick thing. They did nothing. Maybe my numbers are wrong, but at least it's a number. It's something to work with. But when you don't put numbers, when you have an organization that doesn't even say from the beginning, doesn't even on August 1st say, hey, listen, we need a balanced budget now, they're not fighting. How are they going to fight for their people when all this money is not being collected and then and is just going into these wealthy politicians' pocket and will never get to them? I should say wealthy politicians, but you know what I'm saying. It's just unfair, totally unfair. Anyway, so I'll point out that the reason why you need a balanced budget is because then you talk about this in specifically. But when you don't, it just all ends up behind back rooms. And then to make people feel like you're doing something, you go tack this policeman like he's the problem. No, he's not the problem. Your general hypocrisy about not being fair across the state to education and other things, that's the problem. Anyway, thanks for watching.